A routine cargo flight turns into a desperate fight for survival when a simple mistake triggers an unstoppable chain of events. This is the story of a crew pushed to the absolute edge. On a hazy morning in June 2006, two pilots prepared for a short hop from Liege, Belgium, to London Stansted. Their aircraft, a converted Boeing 737 freighter, was aging but meticulously maintained. The real vulnerability wasn't in the machinery, but in the cockpit. The captain, newly promoted, had started his duty cycle in Istanbul and was now grappling with serious fatigue. His first officer, while rested, was relatively inexperienced. Together, they formed a junior crew, competent, but lacking the deep reservoir of experience that would soon be desperately needed. Their pre-flight briefing revealed a potential problem, a 30% chance of poor visibility at their destination. As a precaution, the captain ordered extra fuel. This decision, meant to buy them time, would later come to define their fate. The takeoff from Liege was uneventful. The plane climbed into the overcast sky, settling into its cruise. But en route, a critical piece of information came to light. The instrument landing system at Stansted was out of service. This meant they would have to rely on a less precise radar-guided approach, a procedure requiring more focus and, crucially, clearer weather. As they neared London, the weather update was not good. The visibility had dropped, falling below the legal minimum for their planned arrival. The fog was thickening, not lifting. Faced with a closed door at Stansted, the captain made a choice. Instead of immediately diverting to an alternate airport, he decided to wait. He put the plane into a holding pattern, hoping the morning sun would burn through the mist. For precious minutes they circled, their fuel reserves slowly ticking down with each loop. The pressure in the cockpit was mounting. The company's operations desk was unresponsive to their queries about a diversion airport. They were on their own, burning fuel, with nowhere to land. Finally, a decision was made. They would divert to East Midlands Airport. While the weather there was also poor, it offered a crucial advantage, a sophisticated Category 3 instrument landing system. This system was capable of guiding them down in extremely low visibility, a so-called autoland procedure where the plane essentially lands itself. The crew, now burdened by fatigue and the stress of the diversion, began setting up for the high-stakes procedure. This was a rare and demanding task for any pilot. The captain hadn't performed one in months. The first officer had only ever practiced it in a simulator. Worst, they were operating in the window of circadian low, that time before dawn when human alertness naturally plummets. They were tired, stressed, and about to attempt one of the most difficult maneuvers in aviation. The approach began smoothly. The autopilots were engaged, perfectly tracking the invisible radio beams down towards a runway they could not yet see. Air traffic control cleared them to land. Everything was going according to plan. Then, confusion. An unexpected transmission crackled through their headsets. It was from air traffic control. But it wasn't related to flight safety, it was about their company's permission to land, the controller said. You're not to land here from your operational authority. At your discretion, you may go round. The message was contradictory and ill-timed. In the high-stress environment of the cockpit, the captain, seeking clarification, reached for his control column, but in that moment, his hand slipped. He pressed the wrong button. A sharp warning horn blared through the cockpit. Both autopilots disengaged. The aircraft was now in manual flight, low to the ground and completely blind in the thick fog. A single slip of the finger had just shattered their automated descent. Chaos erupted. The captain frantically tried to re-engage the automation, but the system, now below its minimum engagement altitude, refused. The first officer called out deviations from the flight path, but his warnings were lost in the turmoil. Neither pilot fully grasped their critical situation until a calm, synthetic voice called out 50. They were just 50 feet from the ground and dangerously off course. Seconds later, the ground proximity warning system screamed its terrifying alarm. Terrain, pull up. The captain reacted instantly. He firewalling the throttles and yanked back on the controls. But it was too late. With a sickening jolt, the aircraft slammed into the earth, just left of the runway. The force of the impact was brutal. Nearly 4 times the force of gravity. The entire right main landing gear was sheared clean off the wing. Miraculously, the crippled jet bounced back into the air. But it was gravely wounded. Hydraulic fluid was gushing from the damaged wing. The flaps were mangled, and a massive part of its landing gear was gone. They were flying, but for how long? The gear warning horn blared incessantly, a constant reminder of their predicament. The first officer radioed a terse, shocking message to the tower. We have touched the ground. Their nightmare was far from over. They were now dangerously low on fuel, flying a damaged and unstable aircraft, and they had to land it again. The crew attempted an emergency gear extension, hoping it might just be stuck, but it failed. They didn't know the gear was lying in a muddy field back at East Midlands. They declared an emergency and requested a vector to Birmingham where the weather was finally clear. But Birmingham presented a new dilemma. The ideal runway for their situation had an inoperative glide slope, a key part of the landing system. To use a runway with a fully functional system, they would have to fly a longer approach, burning more of their dwindling fuel. The captain, facing an agonizing choice, opted for the longer path. It was the safer approach, but it risked them running out of fuel before they even reached the runway. Then came the final, horrifying revelation. When asked by air traffic control about their cargo, the crew confirmed the manifest included pyrotechnics. A crash landing could now mean a massive explosion. A police helicopter was scrambled to visually inspect their landing gear. The report from the helicopter crew confirmed their worst fears. The right main gear was completely missing. They were coming in with only 2 wheels. There was only one way to do this. The captain would have to perform a precision crash landing, deliberately setting the right wing and engine down on the tarmac at high speed. He lined up on the left side of the runway to give himself as much space as possible. Fire trucks and emergency crews stood by, their lights flashing in the early morning light. The captain expertly guided his broken plane down. The aircraft crossed the runway threshold, its computer calling out the final heights. 2010 then touched on the 2 remaining wheels. The captain held the right wing up for as long as he could, fighting to keep the plane stable, before letting it settle onto the engine. A shower of brilliant orange sparks erupted as metal ground against asphalt. The plane screeched to a violent grinding halt. After a terrifying ordeal that pushed them to their absolute limits, the crew was safe. The subsequent investigation highlighted a cascade of human factors: fatigue, stress, and a critical deviation from procedure at the worst possible moment. It was a stark lesson in aviation safety, proving that fatigue and procedure, not the machine, often become the true adversaries in the sky. And it showed that standard protocols are the last, and most important, line of defense when human performance is at its lowest ebb. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as gripping as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories from the world of aviation.